Podcasting is more than just talking. It's listening. BSing with Bob Schmidt.
The BS with Bob Schmidt Podcast, talking entrepreneurship, business, and marketing. This week I thought we'd try something a little different. Talk to a professional on hiring from Trend Personnel Services. DW Bobst joining me out of Dallas, Texas. And DW, welcome to the program. Thanks for being on with us today. I wanted to talk to you about, that entrepreneur that now needs to start hiring people. What kind of process is there to get that first employee?
Well, as far as hiring, you just basically get out there and either outsource the payroll and all the government functions. But as far as the actual interviewing and finding someone, there's multiple ways to do it. You can go out there and either go through the web searches. There's all kinds of ways today to go and search the job sites and that kind of stuff. But I recommend kind of the tried and true, the career builders and all that kind of stuff, and start sourcing candidates, or go through a third-party source. If you get a good third-party source, such as a good recruiter, they can, if you're busy building your business, you don't have time to go through all those resumes, so that's another option as well.
Well, DW, you mentioned Career Builder, things like that. I know that there's a lot of websites out there that'll help you in the process of, at least as a job seeker, and I'm assuming that as a job fulfiller also probably use the same services like Monster, Indeed, using a lot of LinkedIn in order to try to find those. Are there ways that you can streamline that process so that way they're, looking for the exact right candidate?
Well, I mean, if I'm looking at the slant of this being an entrepreneur who's in a younger business, time is money. They're trying to get their business rolling, and now they're at the phase where they're wanting to hire employees. They have to decide on, do I pay somebody to do this search for me and then me just kind of find the right candidate, or do I take the time on my own? And that's really a budgetary question that the entrepreneur will have to answer on their own. But if you go through, whether it's, they got Indeed's the hot thing, Glassdoor now has some recruiting opportunities, things like that. If you go through those, you'll get candidates. You'll just have to source them through, make the phone calls, call the, get them scheduled, that kind of stuff, unless you have somebody who you already have hired, like some support person or something like that. But, or like I said, you can go to whether it's a temp agency or whether it's a full-blown recruiting service. They'll do all that for you, but either way, it's either going to be your time or money.
DW, is that what your business does? Is that what TrendHR does, is helps you to weed through the candidates?
We started in 1997 as truly a temp service and placement, and then over the next 20 years that we've been in business, we've migrated into a full-blown HR outsource company where we help companies with the payroll, the benefits, hiring and firing, all the government compliance that happens, and a good candidate as far as a client company is whenever they've got about 7 to 10 employees and they're starting to have to deal with human resource issues. But yeah, out of the gate, if there was an entrepreneur that was wanting to use a service, we do that as well, and that's been a really hot topic these days because unemployment's so low that it's really hard for employers to find candidates these days.
I know that you're in Dallas. I'm up in Wisconsin. Is there like cross-state things that you have to do differently, or could an Alaska business hire somebody out of Dallas to do that for them, or somebody on the East Coast or West Coast hire, or is it kind of state familiarity?
It depends on the position. I would recommend that you want to try and stay local as much as possible. But if you're looking for, physicians or something highly professional, a CFO or something like that, you may have to cross state lines to find that perfect candidate. It just really depends on whether you're talking about, multi-six-figure positions or whether you're talking about, support positions or lower management. If it was those type of positions, the support or lower management, there's got to be, as long as it's a decent sized city you're living in, there's some good placement firms that you can go through.
Well, I'll tell you what, you mentioned the six figures. As a podcaster, if I'm counting the zeros at the end, I still don't reach six figures yet, but I'm working on it. A few weeks ago, what was it, 6, 7 weeks ago, the whole Roseanne thing blew up, and ABC ended up firing Roseanne over a tweet. Is that something that we're seeing more often, that social media has an effect on what people are, how they're able to do their job?
Oh, it's a two-way street. The employers are definitely looking through social media. They admit that 35% plus of employers have it in their policy to actually look where they're requiring hiring managers to go through social media. But we've seen numbers as high as 75 or 80% of voluntary searches whenever you're looking for a candidate to find any type of gotchas in the background, because everyone has a really good first interview. So you want to try and do as much background check, because it takes like 6 months to train somebody. So for both sides, you want to make sure that whether I'm the candidate looking for the job these days, or whether I'm the employer looking for the next candidate to fill a position, neither one of them really should want to waste their time. It should be open and honest dialogue both ways, so that you guys should be, both directions looking for long-term employment, 5+ years, even though that's not the common occurrence today. That should be what both sides are looking for.
So with so many people looking for jobs, you mentioned earlier that the unemployment is really low. What are some things that a person or a candidate can do to stand out from everybody else that happens to be looking for that, that dream job?
Well, I mean, it holds true today like it did 30, 40, 50 years ago. I mean, be prepared. If I'm hiring somebody and they don't know anything about my company, strike one. If they come in and they don't, and they're not, smiling, they don't look like they're happy to be there, they look disheveled, they're not looking professional, strike two. If they, if they start, battering and berating their former employer, strike three. And I'm looking for how quick I can end the interview. I mean, those are just tried and true, and it's both directions. If I'm a candidate looking for a job, and this guy's a complete cold jerk, I probably don't want to work there, and since it's low employment, I've got some options, especially if I'm pretty good. So I think that goes both ways, and just a little further as far as the negativity part is, if I'm a candidate looking for a job, never, ever, ever. I mean, even if I'm trying to get new clients, I never say anything negative about my competition, about my employer, about my, ex-wife, about my drive there. I mean, I keep it all positive, because if that person's already negative in an interview, it's not going to get better. It's kind of like whenever you date a girl, if she's already, talking about all of her ex-boyfriends or whatever, then it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. So, this is the chance to put your best foot forward. So you want to make sure that you want to be prepared, which means, research the company, research and think of really hard about the questions that you're going to ask the employer too, because intelligent questions means intelligent person. Dumb questions means dumb person. You know what I mean? So all that plays into the just the basics in the first 15 minutes of sitting down.
I don't know. I get paid to ask questions, so you tell me, are these questions okay? What about when somebody's goes into an interview, their first interview, they're feeling confident? How do you do confident without being cocky?
I mean, it's a very fine line. You should sit up straight and portray confidence, but at the same time, I guess it'd be the same as a sports analogy is, do I when I score a touchdown, do I, confidently hand the ball to the referee, or do I slam the ball down and do a 15-minute dance? I mean, it's pretty obvious if you're confident in yourself, or whether you cross that line to cocky. And that is, if it's a first interview, you want to make sure that you're listening a lot, and then only, answer the questions and expanding whenever you can tell that the person wants more. If you don't ever shut up, then I think you've crossed that line.
DW, what about people that overshare? I mean, because I tend to be the kind of person that when there's silence, I want to fill in that space. It's probably from my many years of being on the radio that when you're asking somebody a question and there's that pause, you just want to fill that vacuum, you want to fill that void. And sometimes I found that when I've been interviewed, that's the thing. It's like, well, they asked me a question, and then pretty soon I'm telling them about when I went on vacation last year or something,
And you know what? As far as the candidate's concerned, usually, because I've been on the other side so many times, that the more nervous they are, the more they talk, and I want them to talk, but sometimes you can talk yourself out of a job, just like you can talk yourself out of a sale. You want to try and limit most of your answers to less than a minute, unless you can see that they're nodding their head and they're engaged, they're leaning forward. Body language means a lot. So if they're engaged and they want you to add more, then keep adding. But a lot of times, like what you're saying, is if they're asking you about your biggest challenge, and then you give them your challenge, and the next thing you know, you're talking about, like you were saying, your summer vacation, you're going to turn off that interviewer pretty quick.
What about familiarity with the person that's doing the interviewing? Because social media is out there. Everybody's doing research to find out a little bit more about whoever it is that may be interviewing them, or about the company, and you're trying to get the upper hand. And let's say that I found out, for example, that that you went on vacation last year and you went to South Carolina and you did this, this, and this, and I said, so how was that trip where you went water sliding? Oops. All of a sudden you become a stalker or something.
I agree. It's a fine line. I think you do as much research as you can as possible on the company, but if you're, as a candidate, if you're researching the interviewer, which you may not even know their name, but if you do, and you're finding out about their family or whatever, that is stalking, and probably pretty uncomfortable for an interviewer to get questions about them personally.
A lot of times when you go to an interview, the interviewer always asks, what's your dream job? What do you want to be doing 5 years from now? The typical questions that people get asked. How do you answer those?
Be prepared for them. And if you get those kind of old questions like that, and that's not the normal questions anymore for a good interviewer, because it's been there and done that. It kind of is stale. But be prepared for them if you do get that one. Having a 5-year goal or something in place, that does make sense. But your dream job or whatever, I would flip it and say more of what is your ideal work environment? What is what's your working style? What goal or achievement are you most proud of? You know what I mean? And you're saying basically the same things, but you're putting a fresh spin on it, so it doesn't seem like you went to old hiringmanagers.com and just asked the same old question. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. So when you answer that question, or let's say you're asked that question, give me an example of something that you did. How do you do that without being braggy? Just more factual than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, they want to find out more about you. It's communication. It's like you're dating each other for a job. So you want to sit down in a comfortable environment, and hopefully both sides within the first 5 minutes become comfortable with each other, and you're just having open dialogue. And so they want to find out more about you, and you should, hey, what is your dream job? Well, and if you did the research on the company, then you tie it into the company. It's like you're telling a story, but you're still including the potential company in the story. So let's say if I want to work for that company and they build, widgets. Well, then I say, hey, my dream job, I've always wanted to, I've always wanted to do this and this and manage this part, and I noticed in your company that you do these widgets in this certain way, and that's a technology that I've always been interested in. You know what I mean? So you answer their question, but you tied it back into their company, and they'll appreciate that, because that you're 50% ahead of everyone if you actually did the research on the company, and then you're top one person or top two people if you actually tie in all of their questions back into how you can help their company, and that's something that you want to be a part of. And then most importantly, that you're planning on staying there long term.
One of the things though that when you answer that question, where do you see yourself in, or what do you want to be doing, that type of a question, and you say, I'd like to be working on this widget in 5 years. Doesn't a lot of times the interviews kind of see that as kind of a BS answer, that they're just trying to, I don't know, kiss your hiney in order to get that job?
Well, if you don't kiss a little hiney, you probably won't get the job. But I mean, I would say the negative part would be very minuscule compared to the positive part, which is that once again, you did the research, you wanted to be part of that team, you showed the enthusiasm towards it. Because I'd rather have someone on my team that at least at that point in time they wanted to be there and they wanted to learn and progress that team as well as the whole company culture, more than the guy who, hey, I'm here as long as it sounds good to me, and then I'm and I'm looking for the next job for a little bit more time, money, or management opportunity.
Is that how you answer the question that, why are you looking for a new job? Looking for more time, looking for more money, more free time, more responsibility type thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, people do it for different reasons. That the studies show that actually, even though everyone says, "Hey, I'm leaving this job for more money," usually those are job hoppers. The people who you find that have 10 plus years experience, in an industry, and for sure with one certain company, those are usually, they get appreciated. They're part of a positive work atmosphere. And actually what's crazy is it's usually the benefits are the kicker that makes them stay, whether that's vacation, 401ks, other retirement opportunities, training. That's what keeps an employee there. The salary and compensation is what starts the conversation, and for sure may get you there, but that's not what keeps you there.
DW, I've seen on LinkedIn a couple of different posts where people have put up saying that people don't quit jobs, they quit people. Are you saying that as a truth?
Oh yeah, it's completely true. Like I said, I mean, you see it in professional athletes, and you see it in a lot of employees where they say, hey, I'm leaving this city, or I'm leaving this job, or I'm doing, this deal because, hey, I want to make more money. But that, like I said, that's usually the same people that job hop again the next 2 years. And you can look on their resume and they got, 6 jobs over 12 or less years. And those, for me personally, whether it's my clients or whether it's my company, I'm not hiring those people because they're looking for the next opportunity almost as soon as they get in their cubicle. So, I want to find people who they're looking for a team, an atmosphere, an opportunity that they want to stay at. They want to finish their career there, and so it is. It's the people. And not just the management. It's also their peers, and do they have respect for their peers? Is it kind of a cool place to go to? Are they happy when they show up every day, or is it just when they come in, the shoulders are down because it's, just another complete beat down of a day. And a lot of that happens with peers and lower management, not upper management.
How realistic is it for somebody that's hiring an employee to think that employee is actually going to stick around for their entire career?
Well, the studies show it doesn't happen, but I can tell you, I mean, I was watching something the other day, and there was I can't remember, the Food Network or something like that, but they were showing a restaurant up in up in New York, and it was a barbecue joint that'd been there for 35 plus years, and several of their employees had been there the entire 35 years. And so, what's in the secret sauce? And I think it is employers putting employees first ahead of themselves, and then having like a fun, engaging atmosphere that that you want to show up to each day, and then once they kind of get ingrained, it's just continue to take care of them. That's what I think makes the difference on whether or not you have someone that's 10 plus years and or whether you have someone that's just a few years. And it's kind of like a marriage. You always got to work on it, right? You need to have constant talks and feedback, and really engaging in that relationship just like you would a friendship or a marriage.
DW, I'm going to kind of follow up with the last two questions that we just talked about. So if your boss is not engaging, and if you're not enjoying where you're working and you end up deciding to leave that company, do you voice those opinions while you're looking for a job, or do you keep that stuff to yourself until you find the new gig?
We here at Trend, we try and have a very open door policy, and just prove once and again that if somebody's owed something, whether it's vacation or any kind of compensation, commissions or whatever, that we take care of them, and then we shake their hand out the door for the next opportunity. As long as they're not going next door and competing against us. But if you do that, you find that it's kind of the weight's off, and you'll get more communication on when they're leaving, how they're leaving, giving you plenty of time to leave, especially with the ones I have an upper management that's about to leave, and he gave me 2 months time to fill that position. So and that comes with a long history of taking care of people out the door, because your reputation is what stays with you, and even a city as big as Dallas, there's only a few degrees of separation that people know each other. And so and it's a two-way street once again. If you burn the bridge, whether it's the employee or the employer, they don't forget. And then these days with social media and Glassdoor and everything, man, they can really rail on you. And it takes a lot to clean back up those postings.
So DW from Trend Personnel Services, just wanted to ask the difference between getting fired and laid off, because some people will say I got fired from a job. Some people will say that I got laid off from a job. Is there a difference between the two, or is it just technicality?
Well, I mean, there is a huge difference, I guess. If I'm looking for another opportunity, of course I'm going to say I got laid off. And if it's a public deal, they can do the research on it. And if you got fired for cause or whatever, I don't know that I would lead with that if I was a candidate either. I would try and sugarcoat it a little bit as well. So technically, it's a huge difference. Whenever an employer is checking the background, which part of it is they do check on your former employers and that kind of stuff. And even though they're not allowed to really go into many details, it's not what they say, it's kind of how they say it. So I would be, I guess, upfront and as honest as I could be, but at the same time, you always want to put yourself in the best light so that you can put the past behind you. And whether that's if there was a good reason for the firing, still trying to clean that up. If it's a layoff, hey, a layoff's a layoff. Down here in Dallas, the unemployment's ridiculously low, probably really less than 2% overall. But, I just had my brother-in-law just got laid off from Bank of America. A whole entire department got laid off. And that's not any cause of his. He went to work and did his job every day, but, it's not his fault that, Bank of America, through strategic, things and stuff they were doing in their past, decided to cut entire departments. So does that make sense? That makes total sense, because with my job that I just got laid off from, they eliminated the staff from that one radio station and just went satellite with it. So, I mean, it does make sense, and it kind of gives me a little bit of peace too, to know that, that's kind of the way that things work. Yeah, and good, bad, or ugly. I mean, we're things happen, period, in life, and there's usually circumstances behind it, even if you make a mistake in life. And overall, we're a pretty forgiving society. So, all that being said, it's all about the spin. How are you putting yourself out there? How are you putting your business out there? How are you putting, what you're selling or what you're doing out there? And that, and the interview is no different. You want to be prepared with your social media, with your life, with all your other aspects, as you're going through the process of looking for new employment, because they're checking all of it. So the more preparation that you have to where you're putting your best foot forward, you'll have your more opportunities, because a lot of times when you've got to an interview these days, they've already kind of vetted you out very quickly, but they've already taken a quick look at you. And so what are they seeing? And then within the first 10 or 15 minutes is what they're seeing jiving with what you're saying. You know what I mean? So you need to be, once again, you need to be honest. If there's something in your past, you need to address it, because it's going to come out. And the fastest way to get kicked to the curb would be that I was being dishonest, and that they found that dishonesty, even if it's a white lie. White lies become big lies, and so the last thing you want to do is begin a relationship, an employment relationship or any other one, with a lie, because it's going to come out at some point, and that doesn't, make for a lasting relationship.
Right on. So the final question I have for you is one that is on this list of things you shouldn't ask, but is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't? And let me start with, why is that a question I shouldn't use, and then you can answer it.
Well, no, I think that's a good wrap up. I think that's actually in an interview, whether it's you doing a podcast or whether that's looking for a job. I think both ways is you want to make sure that if one side feels like there's something unsaid, you just gave them an open opportunity to cover it. So I think, first of all, I think that's always something you want to, there's something I didn't cover, or something you didn't understand, or something that you want me to know. Then of course I think that should be a good final question. But as far as I'm concerned, or as far as Trend's concerned, when it comes to it sounds to me like your podcast is really directed for entrepreneurs. And so the advice I give to entrepreneurs, because I started a company from scratch 20 years ago and grew it to 8 different companies, one of the fastest growing companies in America, is your time is your money. And so if you're trying to grow your business, you need to find ways where you can delegate and be most cost effective as possible with your time and your efforts. And so you need to always be able to delegate or outsource anytime you can, so that you're focused in on what's the most important thing, and have a continual soul searching of what that is, and then find your strengths and weaknesses, especially when you're hiring your first few people, because you want to basically, you almost want to like interview yourself and find out what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then fill in those gaps. I'm a good salesperson and marketer. I'm horrible at the financials and that kind of part. So I quickly found people who were good at those details, so that they could basically round out what my weaknesses were. So that's the biggest piece of advice or question that I would put in there, and make sure it was being covered from both sides, that you were fulfilling your inadequacies with other people or services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. DW Bobst from TrendHR and from trendpersonnel.com. How do potential clients or entrepreneurs, business people, marketers that are listening right now that may have some questions, how do they reach out and ask you there, DW?
The easiest thing is go to trendhr.com, TRENDHR.com, or you can go to our main number, it's 888-TREND-HR. It's pretty easy to find us, and I've got several professionals that can answer about 95% of the questions, or you can reach out to me directly, DW Bobst.
The BSing with Bob Schmidt podcast is brought to you by Orange Computer. Find them online at orangecomputerlax.com.
This has been another podcastforhire.com production.